Hi, and welcome to another SRS podcast. I'm your host today, Jeff Mullin. We'll be joining today with new SRS board members, Ron Lehman and Chris Ames. So we look forward to hearing about their journey throughout the SRS and their anticipated goals for the year on the board. So I guess we'll start with you, Ron. Maybe give the listeners an introduction to yourself.
Yeah, hi. So Ron Lehman, I'm a spine surgeon at Columbia New York Presbyterian in New York City. Been in practice for basically 20 years at this point, and got involved with the SRS really from the time finishing sort of Washington University fellowship at that point, and was fortunate enough to be on several committees, and then became chair of the couple of committees, including the CME committee, and then was asked to be the scientific program chair for the 50th annual meeting in Anchorage, Alaska. In addition, I was the IMAS chair from 2016 to 2019, which was a great experience looking at that, all the different sort of areas and then interacting from that perspective. And then was a board member at large from 2020 to 23. Which was also a good experience. Unfortunately, it was during the pandemic, so we did a lot of those meetings remotely, which wasn't as great as being in person. And now, more recently, I'm the Education Council chair-elect, so I'll take over at the annual meeting next year in 2025.
That'll be the Charlotte meeting where you will assume your throne, correct?
Correct. Yes, exactly.
All right, I guess we'll go talk about those in a little more detail in a little bit, but I guess we'll let Chris Ames go now. So, Dr. Ames, let us know about you.
My name is Chris Ames from UCSF. I'm a neurosurgeon. I have been out in practice kind of similar to Ron, a little bit longer, 22 years now. I finished my fellowship about 23 years ago. When I started out in practice, I was a typical neurosurgeon doing a lot of tumor, degenerative disease, and I came to UCSF, and David Bradford, who was a previous president of the SRS, was doing a lot of adult deformity surgery, and I thought, well, that was really interesting and really good surgery, and the patients seemed to really benefit from that. And I attended a lot of the orthopedic conferences at the time, and Serena Hu, another president of the SRS, was at my institution, saw the incredible surgeries they were doing, and wanted to become more involved in that society and just kind of learn about the society, and found out there was this great organization called the SRS that was interested in recruiting some neurosurgeons and teaching us more about the whole field. So I started attending meetings in the late 2000s, and eventually became more involved in doing some SRS courses. They used to do a combined course with neurosurgery and orthopedics. I think they still do that once or twice a year in the US and abroad. And was faculty at that for many years, and then joined the Adult Deformity Committee, published a few papers under Lloyd Hay, who was directing the committee at that time, in looking at utilization of two surgeons, which is something we had a particular interest in at my institution, PJK prophylaxis. And I think Lloyd was a good advocate for me because I delivered, basically asked me to deliver a few papers, and I delivered them. And then after that, became chair of the Safety and Value Committee, worked on that committee for a few years, then became chair. And more recently, Worldwide Course Committee. I direct some of the collaboration with the international groups that are associated with ISSG, and through that relationship, I developed a lot of international contacts, and I think that's why the SRS thought I could be effective in that role as Worldwide Course Director. And then was really flattered this year and very honored to be elected as director at large, which is my first board experience. So right now I'm just learning how the board works, what the board talks about, what's of interest to the board, and trying to navigate my way and the way I could be most effective as a board member.
Well, congratulations to both of you. I mean, it's a great achievement. Speaks to the hard work you put in for all those years. I think it's interesting that people think of the Scoliosis Research Society as a really research-focused thing, but in both of your trajectories, education was the main focus of that. Obviously, as great clinicians, did you plan on going that route, or do you think more of a focus on research throughout your time in the SRS?
Um,
Ron?
yeah, I guess I can take that first. Yeah, I think that's one of the, the main benefits of, these large organizations like the Scoliosis Research Society. I think like Chris really pointed out, it really comes down to a lot of the relationships that we formed over the years, certainly first with our mentors in different areas, and then seeing the collaboration. And one of the things I think being on the IMAS committee for 3 or 4 years was looking and really expanding the international collaboration. And no different, I think, than Chris's experience more recently with the Worldwide Committee is a lot of the relationships that we've formed with international surgeons and teams, I think has really helped to, develop that and develop all of our interests. And so, I think when we first start out, we look at, presenting papers at the meeting and the annual meeting as well as IMAST. And then we realize, with that comes a lot of education opportunities. And then the sort of next step is looking at research and education opportunities with our international colleagues. And I think that's really helped to elevate, all of our understanding. And, I think now when we look at the membership, we're really close to 50-50. When we look at presentations at the annual meeting in IMAS, it's really, once again, 50-50. And then I had a great experience during residency where I was able to do a 4-month elective in neurosurgery, which for orthopedic training was a little bit unusual, but I sort of grew up in the thoracic pedicle screw time in the late 90s and early 2000s. And then really developed an appreciation of the interaction with, orthopedic surgery and neurosurgery. And really now I think we sort of just consider ourselves spine surgeons, if we do surgery. And I think that's where the society is really taken. But I think it's, once again, the experiences where we start with initially thinking of it as a research component, but then really, I think, understanding and appreciating the educational role that it does play. And then, once again, now in order to advance, all of our understandings, not just in clinical practice, but also in research, is that the cross collaboration between, ortho, neuro, and the international community, and really makes it a pretty, diverse, broad spectrum society, and incorporates all of those things, I think, at this point.
Yeah, I would echo exactly what Ron said. I mean, we first, especially as neurosurgeons, I think we first meet the society in an educational role for us. At least when I trained 20 years ago, it's probably not so much true today because of the efforts of the Scoliosis Research Society. But when I trained, we had good training in instrumentation. We had good training in tumor. But many of the patients we were meeting had spinal deformities, and we really didn't know how to treat that. And so very early on in my career, the SRS was like a North Star, like an educational beacon. I remember just being blown away by the first few meetings I attended with the comprehensive nature of the education with the pre-K courses, and that just transformed my understanding and really boosted my interest in learning about it, and then eventually doing research on it. So I think we first come in learning, and then those of us who are interested in academics and contributing back to the field via research, I think it really boosts our interest in that area, because there's, as we all know in this group, there's such wide variation in outcome. The complications are really significant. Very minor educational points can make a huge difference in someone's revision rates for surgery and alignment, prophylaxis for PJK, and risk stratification. All those things were key components of what I learned, through the SRS. And then I remember one year when Dave Pahys said, this is his year he dedicated to risk stratification. He said, we have to better risk stratify. And really that statement is what led our team to do a lot more research in frailty, do a lot more research in invasiveness, and then eventually in predictive modeling. And it was really Dave Pahys, his idea to start to work in that area. So it's not just, it's education, and then it's research, and then it's even education about research and how to do the best research. And for example, the LEAD program is now educating the next generation of research leaders in how to better lead in those roles for SRS.
Very good. And I think it's interesting you bring up a good transition. You mentioned Dr. Pauly and his vision through his tenure. As you guys move onto the board now this year, is there any particular initiatives you're looking forward to really taking part of, or some other aspect of the SRS this year?
Well, I'll start as the junior member on the board. I mean, right now I'm trying to understand how I can be most effective as a director at large, and the board has that position to take people, surgeons that have worked in the SRS and other roles, and to teach us what a board role is all about and how you can become effective as a board member. So they created that role for that purpose. So that's my main purpose right now is education. So how can I be most effective? And then I also feel like probably the other neurosurgical members of the board, like Justin Smith, how we can best educate and represent the needs of the neurosurgeon to the board, and and increase recruitment of those surgeons that are doing realignment surgery and even degenerative surgery that's influenced by alignment, and bring more of those into the educational and research community. So I would say those are my main roles, and then trying to, of course, always push the point of the spear in predictive modeling and biomarkers, and in terms of developing research priorities that the board may vet.
Thank you. And Ron?
I think those are great points. I mean, I guess now coming back on for my second time on the board, like most things, we really use our experience in the past and interactions in the past to, continue to sort of drive things forward. And I think over the last few years, the SRS has really continued to explode in different areas. It probably wasn't as much like that, even 20 years ago when I started. And I think there's a different appreciation and understanding, and I think really desire to sort of look at a bunch of different things. Even Chris sort of pointed up a little bit, but one of the things now that a lot of us are focusing on is, even smaller surgeries, sort of the degenerative component that everyone does. And we get a lot of requests, I think, through the society to say, well, what constitutes a spinal deformity? Where does it start? How does it start? Why does it start? And I think as we continue to have a better appreciation of, shorter type surgeries, meaning 1 to 3 levels, and sometimes, how we get everything and get these patients potentially, aligned better, are we going to help, thwart some of these bigger surgeries that we've classically had to do? And a lot of the things that we, hear around the table, I think, are that, right? We're incorporating, pediatric cases. Do we do some of these surgeries when patients are younger in their teens, or do we wait a little bit longer? And we're looking at a lot of this cross-pollination to see, does it make, sense to do surgeries when patients are younger? Do those patients do fine, and then it's better when they're a little bit older? But I think looking at this is not just, spinal deformity, but really from the infancy, in terms of what things and when should we be doing these surgeries. And I think a lot of the predictive analytics are exploring that, but also the tweeners, right? Those of us who do pediatric and adult cases, I think we're going to continue to be a little bit of a dying breed potentially, but I think it should be the other way, no different than I was saying to one of my fellows this morning that he's an orthopedic spine surgeon, was in a practice for a couple of years, came back to do our fellowship after being on his own. He's already done 3 or 4 intradural cases, right? So that's, we have a really combined program from that perspective. And I think that's really what we're doing going forward, right? Is the boards, it's really impressive in terms of having neurosurgeons, orthopedic surgeons, pediatric surgeons, and then those, people who do really all these types of cases to continue to, promote everything and get a better, 360-degree understanding. And I think it really can't be done with any society other than the SRS, which is obviously becoming much more diversified, I think, really from, all perspectives. And I think that's one of the things that I would like to continue to move forward as an education council chair, is really, having this education component that is diversified with a lot of different inputs, and not just really the same, talking points, that potentially may have been there in the past, but really looking at all the abilities in education that can really be brought forth with many different members at this point.
All right, very good. Well, we're running out of time here, so I'm going to give one plug for something. I'm going to ask you guys one parting shot each. So you both mentioned neurosurgery's role in all of this, and we just finished the first ever SRS CNS, the Congress of Neurologic Surgeons Symposium, at the CNS annual meeting. I think it was a great success. And offline, I ask you both to join us next year. So for all of our listeners, look forward to these guys joining us next year at the CNS SRS Symposium in the annual meeting. That'll be next October in Los Angeles. with that said, one, I guess, lighthearted question. Can you give us your guys' favorite memory within the SRS in your 2 decades on this committee or on this society?
I mean, I would start out by saying the research has been incredible, education's been incredible, but the most valuable thing to me has been the mentorship and the friends that I've made around the world through the SRS. So it might not be one particular memory, but it's the memory of the deep friendships that I now have around the world that was an unanticipated benefit.
That's great. Ron?
Yeah, I completely agree. It's really the networking and the interaction with all surgeons. And I think, obviously it started when you're younger and you realize as your career develops, you look at things a little bit differently. But I remember probably one of my favorite memories is from about 10 years ago at the annual meeting. We had a leadership dinner, and I realized looking around the table, there were 12 surgeons at my table. And I think I was the only US based surgeon, right? Which is something that I thought was really pretty incredible. And everyone was similar in age within at least, 7 or 8 years of practice. But it was really cool to look at the table that I was sitting at and realizing I was the only, quote, American surgeon there, which I think is one of the things that's really been the most interesting to me, spending a lot of time in China and Europe, and that really networking and interaction that we have with all of our colleagues. And I completely agree with Chris from that perspective. It's not just one thing. I think it's the one thing, which is the networking and education and interaction we really have with all the surgeons throughout the world.
That's great. And well, I thank you both for your time. I know you're both leaders in our field and very busy clinically, so it's hard to get time away from your practice. So I appreciate you spending a few minutes talking to us tonight. So congratulations on your ascension to the board, and we look forward to seeing you guys soon.
Thanks,
Have a good
Jeff.
night.
Great. Thanks so much.
Great, guys.
Take care.
All right, viewers. So now we're going to transition to the second part of our podcast, introducing the listeners to the new board members. So today we have joining with us our two other board members who I'll let them introduce themselves and tell us about themselves. So gentlemen, please go.
My name is Javier Pizones. I'm a spine surgeon in Madrid, Spain. I do both pediatrics and adult deformity patients, 50%, 50%, more or less. My background has been here. So I studied university in Madrid and did my residency in Madrid, but I've traveled to the States to complete my studies and gain some experience. And so I first started going to the annual meetings in 2009, and I became a candidate member in 2015. So I was always interested in this society because my mentors were already members from the society, so they talk about it all the time. So I had to join. I didn't have much, anything else, and I'm happy. I've been committed with committees. I've been serving in 5, 6 different committees: growing spine, adult deformity, research, promotion, and oversight. I've been involved also in the blended learning task models, in Spondia EI experience, and finally in the education committee that I co-chaired last year.
Very good. So before Josh goes, I'm just going to, I guess, reiterate the point you just made about the mentors being so important for all members getting involved with. Same thing happened to our other board members. Stress that importance. I think that speaks to society and how all the members view so strongly, try to get more people involved. All right, Josh.
My name is Josh Pahys. I'm a orthopedic spine surgeon based in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. I initially, for the first few years of my practice, was doing adults and kids. So I was fortunate to have the WashU fellowship with Dr. Bidwell, Dr. Lenke, and Dr. Root. And then for about the past 10, 11 years, I've been focusing solely on pediatric spinal deformity surgery at the Shriners Hospital Children in Philadelphia. I couldn't agree more. The mentors were incredibly important to me. From residency, where I met Randy Betts and Amr Samdani, and then to fellowship, working with Dr. Lenke and Dr. Bidwell, were a huge impact on me in my career. And I was able to go to my first SRS meeting in 2009 as well, where I got to do a presentation and got things rolling from there. So I consider myself very, very fortunate to have a great group of mentors, and some of whom I still get to work with Amr Samdani. So it's been a real treat.
So Josh, leading up to your joining the board, what I guess committees or involvement did you have sort of getting with the SRS?
Yeah, so I've had a very fortunate kind of time in the SRS, I guess, joining back in 2011, and becoming a full member shortly after. I was able to do the Edgar Dawson Traveling Fellowship and actually go out and visit our fellow board member, Chris Ames, way back, I think, in 2015, and then participate in a traveling fellowship in 2017 with Rick McCarthy, Anjo Kim, and Sam Cho. As far as the committees go, I was able to be on the website committee and chair that for a few years, and then move to the Education Resource Committee and chair that as well. And then sort of now moving on to the IMAS committee. So it's been, again, a great experience being able to try different committees, which show the breadth of the SRS, all that they're involved with and all that they do on a regular basis. It's certainly been a learning experience for me. I also will highlight the LEAD program that Javi and I were very fortunate to be a part of. That was a really amazing experience. And at the very beginning, we kind of got a good overview of what the SRS is, its inner workings, everything from, the reporting structure to the financial aspect of it, which we don't always talk about. But then just to have a real great, sort of year-long course on leadership skills, from everything from soup to nuts, from the key opinion leaders and key members of the SRS was just fantastic. So all those things have led me to where I am today, and I'm certainly very lucky for it.
Good. It's good to hear you both are in the LEAD program. So I'm fortunate enough, I'm just starting that endeavor this year. So we'll see what lessons I can pick up along the way. So with that said, as you guys are now becoming leaders, I guess, and graduate from the program as a board, do you have any sort of expectations or goals for your role this year with this the board?
We first started in the board, I think it was this annual meeting. So we got our first meeting over there all day long. So we will more or less overview what other committees are doing. Councils are talking about the tasks that have been involved during the year. We talk about finances. We talk how to move forward with membership and organize the IMAS, the annual meeting. So it's an overall view of what the society is doing. And for sure, from my side, open to whatever the society needs from me. Happy to help and work for these 2 years that are coming.
I think it was
Josh, before I let you go on your expectations, Greg Mundis is just joining us now. So, hey, Greg, thanks for joining us. I know it's hard for you. We're recording this in the middle of the workday for you out in California. So just real quick summarizing, this is part 2 of the introduction to board members. And so Javier and Josh gave us a little background on themselves, your current practice, and how you got involved in SRS. So if you could mind just sort of going on those lines, and we'll go from there.
Okay, cool. Awesome. Well, Jeff, thanks for doing this, by the way. This is awesome. Again, Greg Mundis, I'm a practicing deformity surgeon out in San Diego at the Scripps Clinic. My journey with the SRS really much is anchored in Dr. Ekbarnia. He, as a fellow, I mean, it like literally was imprinted into my DNA. And so I don't even know a world without the organization. For me, just being involved with the SRS is a huge part of job satisfaction for me, and something I just tremendously enjoy. With the SRS, I've done several things over the years. From the different committees I've sat on. I've done a lot of different committees, which is actually something I recommend for all young surgeons, is to really get a view of the SRS, is to hop around committees and sit on them for a year or two and kind of get a feel for the organization. And then I went on to do things like being the program chair for the annual meeting under Todd Albert and working with Suk and Shaw with that. And then I eventually became one of the under 45 board members. So I got to do my first term in that regard as an at-large member. And it was great to see how the organization worked behind the scenes. And then more recently, getting nominated and now confirmed as the treasurer. Super excited about that. I actually run a couple of different nonprofits. So working with a nonprofit and finances is a little bit part of my wheelhouse, and very much look forward to building off what Dave has done the last 3 years. And glad to be under his mentorship for this year, and then hopefully continue to help with the organization going to a very nice place for financial freedom for the future. So there you go. Sorry for being long-winded.
Congratulations on becoming the treasurer. I guess we'll jump to Josh. Any comments on your expectations for the year or goals?
No, I think the first board meeting we discussed about the international reach of the SRS and how that's expanding, which is exciting. And the success of Ames in San Diego, and then just trying to build on that as it moves out to Europe next year in Glasgow. I think is exciting. They're looking to partner with Eurospine, British Scoliosis Society, things like that, to really continue to push to make this a global society and expand its reach and its impact. Was exciting. It really is a huge commitment from the board, and I think that's shown in the makeup of the SRS, where it continues to be evolving, and the international members are increasing, as you can see with they let Javier in. So,
And in line with that international topic, you mentioned you've done the traveling fellowship. Greg, you also completed the traveling fellowship also. So maybe you can just give a quick comment on that. Our previous podcast we recorded was on people who just finished their fellowship. So how was that experience for you guys?
Go ahead, Javi.
I was asleep in the back of my car, so he had a really boring experience when he came to Philly, but
And it's quite nice. So I always say that the best part is getting the connection. So getting to know people that you admire, that they're in the first row, and then not only that, but getting to know the second row guys, which will be in the first row in the next years, and creating that bond and that web. That is great.
Yeah, for me, it was a big game changer for me. Like the 3 weeks traveling around were just. It was magical on so many levels for me. One is just at the time it came in my career, just being able to disconnect for 3 weeks was like really, really healthy. Something I didn't quite recognize that I needed. Ironically, it was like this ability to not worry about everything at home and to really just focus on, my own health. I made a commitment on my traveling fellowship. I wouldn't turn on a single piece of electronics in the room. So that was kind of cool because like I had zero distractions the entire time. And so I had to like read and like journal and focus and write stuff down. And it was a really, I don't know, like I said, like all the bonding stuff that Javi talked about is like so relevant. But so sort of the secondary impact on like just mental health and well-being and getting to be alone for a little bit was actually, I think, came at a great time in my career. So
sounds like it's a great experience for all of you guys. So you can feel free to say the traveling fellowship again, but last part of the podcast, I asked the board members, what's the one memory or one thing about the SRS that they'll always remember, the sort of a fun thing they enjoyed about it? Josh, you want to go first?
something about being an SRS member.
Yeah.
I think it's
Through your journey being an SRS member.
The meeting highlighted that is just meeting with, sort of work friends and colleagues and getting to see them, every year, a couple of times a year has been great. Trade stories and just, get together and, in addition to the academic environment, it's a social environment and get to meet these people and chatting on a regular basis and building friendships, across country, across the world has been really rewarding. And it's, one of my favorite parts of the SRS and being a part of it.
Javi?
Well, I think my first experience was 2009, first time in San Antonio. It was my first hour in the annual meeting. It was before everything started, and I got into the elevator with my mentor, Dr. Izquierdo, and I didn't know who the other guy was in the elevator. So just Dr. Izquierdo introduced to me, and he was Mark Usher, and I was actually in the elevator with Mark Usher. So I called on and said, you know what I did? I was in the elevator with Mark Usher. It was like a history for me. Yeah, really impressive. So you get to know and get in touch with people that you read on papers and from Spain. So for me, this is another world. It's like going to Disney World. It was at that time, and it is right now. So it's a dream.
I took a 10 home with Dubussé, and I was like, what? It's in the airport. That was cool.
Yeah, I echo. I mean, like you'll hear it all the time, right? It's the relationships that you build, the people that you meet. 100% the highlight. I think maybe something a little bit more esoteric for me is like I got into cycling 3 or 4 years ago, and like now we're like all of us are bringing our bikes to the SRS every year, and we're like cycling somewhere in the area where we were. So we were just in Barcelona, but then we took 3 days afterwards and rode through the mountains in Girona, and it was amazing. And it was like all these guys that were at the SRS as well, so it was just super fun to connect in a different level. So yeah, that's probably a highlight for me now.
Well, fantastic. We're actually, believe it or not, running out of time already. And so this podcast has been a little bit odd. There's going to be 2 pieces with the first part and second part. But the interesting thing is the overarching themes, all 3 of you guys and the previous two guys, all they talked about was how the SRS, despite being such a great academic organization, such a great research organization, and I think is the best in the world, the greatest thing for all people is the mentorship and the community we build throughout this. So I think it speaks to the people as part of this society and
Amen.
represent as well on the board. So congratulations again. Look forward to seeing you guys soon.